Hi, this is Tommy from Systems for Dentists, and in this video we'll look at the patient record. Specifically, we'll look at how you can search for patients, how you can edit patient details, look at how you can register new patients, how to create households, how to add referral details, and then we'll look at recording a medical assessment for a patient, adding pop-ups and memos to the record, and also how to send information to wireless signature pads and also via patient portal. So from the top of the screen, if I select the patient drop down, from here we can create new patient records, we can search and open patients, and then also we've got a recent list. So from here you can select patients that you've worked with recently. I'll select one of the patients from that list and you'll see that that patient record now opens. Next we'll have a look at how you can search for a patient. So if I click open, it brings up the search window. From here you can search for patients using their surname, forename, address, postcode, ID number, reference number, or even email address. You don't need to enter the full patient's name. So for example, if I enter A for surname and A for forename, and then if I select to do a search, it brings up all the patients whose forename and surname starts with the letter A. From here you can see patients' names, date of births, reference IDs, address, registered dentist, the scheme that they're on, and also any patient with this icon is indicated to show that they have an active open course of treatment. To open a patient, simply double click on them. That will then open this record. I can now see at the bottom of the screen I've got two patients open, and I can use these tabs to jump to another patient. I'll jump back to the second patient that I opened. So SFD allows for you to open and work with multiple patients at the same time. The first screen that you see on opening a patient record is this screen here, and this displays information such as personal details, so name, address, telephone number, practice information, so registration scheme, practice details, any custom fields that have been completed, and also any future appointments are listed in here. On the far right of this screen are some key dates, such as last form, last visit, last recall, etc. At the top we have a checked button. If you check these details and they're up to date, I can click on this checked button, and then what that will do is it will put a date and time stamp to indicate when those details were last checked. If you want to make any changes to these details, simply double click the area that you want to change. So for example, if you want to change a telephone number, double click on that. That opens up the properties window, and then from here I can select to add a new number, to edit a number, or delete a number. I'm going to edit this patient's phone number. Then if I click save and save again, you'll see that the patient's number on the home screen has now been updated. So next we'll have a look at how you can register a new patient to the practice. So to do this, I'll select the patient menu again, click on new. This will then open the patient properties window, and from here you can start entering patient details to register them. So I'll start with entering the patient's surname and then also the patient's forename. I can then select the patient's title, and you'll see the gender defaults based on this. I'll enter a date of birth for the patient. You can also enter known as name if the patient is known as something else. You can enter a nationality and occupation if that's required. And if your practice sends emails out to patients, then it's very important to record the patient's email address. Last name can be used for previous names that the patient's been known as, such as maiden names. Next I can turn on and select specific flags. These are notifications that alert users about specific things relevant to that patient. From here I can now record the patient's registered GP details. You can search for a GP or practice, select them, select a specific GP, click OK to record those. I'll move along to the next tab, address and phone. So let's record the patient's address. If you subscribe to our postcode lookup service, then you just need to enter the postcode. I then need to click on the postbox icon, and it will allow me to select a specific house number or name. Click OK to save that, and that records the address. You're also able to create a household. So this is really useful if you want to indicate a number of people who live in the same house who are all registered at the same practice. I'll select to create a new household. I'll confirm that. So now I've got a household, you can add members to that household. And you can either add an existing patient to the household, or you can add a new patient. So in this example, I'm going to add the patient's wife. So I can select this. I can then enter the details of the other person who lives in the same household. So I'll enter the same surname, I'll enter the patient's forename, select a title, and just a date of birth at this stage. I'll then click Save, and I can see that that patient has now been added to that household. So this can be really useful when you're booking family appointments, as it will allow you to book all members of the household in at one time. Also for addresses, it means if you change the address for one patient, it will automatically update for other members of the household. If you'd like to record another alternative address for the patient, then you can select this tab here. So this could be useful if letters or communication is sent to parents or a family member, or you could use it to enter a work address if required. Next, we'll record the patient's phone number. So I can select the drop down here, and I can record new or indicate if the patient doesn't have a number. I'll enter a landline first of all, and I'll save that. If you send out text messages, it's important that you also record a mobile phone number. So I'll record the patient's mobile. If I click Save, I can see now that a mobile number has been recorded. So this is the number that any SMS messages sent from the system will go to. Next, I'll select Practice. So from here you can see the reference ID. So this is the number that identifies the patient. You can also enter national insurance number, NHS number, and indicate if the patient is exempt for any reason. You can select the registered dentist from here, as well as hygienist. And also you can select the scheme that the patient's registered on. Next, I can select a colour to categorize patients if that's required. I'll not do that in this example. And you can also record their ethnicity, use of English, and box number if that's useful. What is very useful is the block appointments option. This can be used to prevent a patient being booked into an appointment. For example, if a patient has a balance that they haven't paid off, you can select this. Nobody in the practice can then book them into an appointment, and then you can deselect it if you want to free them up to be booked in. Next, I can select the marketing information, so how did the patient find out about the practice. This information can be reported on if necessary. Next, I can record correspondence, so I can indicate patients' preferences for communications. If you've recorded an alternative address, then you can indicate a default contact or billing address to send mail to. Contact type indicates patient's preferences for communication. The default options are selected, but you can deselect this, and if a patient doesn't like a certain type of communication, you can deselect these options as required. To record GDPR consent, you can select Update. This presents a statement describing how the practice uses patients' information. And if patients consent to additional communications, you can indicate their preferences for letters, SMS, and email. And you can indicate how the patient's consent was gained. I'll click OK to update that. The next tab is Groups, and from here you can create groups to organize patients in different ways. For example, you might want to create a group for a number of patients who all live in the same care home. Next is Custom Fields. These are fields that can be set up and used to record specific things about a patient. For example, I can indicate here that the patient would like whiter teeth. You can then report on these fields. So for example, you can find all patients who've answered yes to that question. If I select the right pointing arrow here, I can see there's one final tab, which is Referral. You can use this area to record referrals both in and out of the practice. I'll add a referral in. I can select the practice that I want to refer in from. I can select an organisation and an individual person if required. If the person I want isn't listed there, I can select Referral to add those details in. I can then indicate referral type, the status. The date will default to today, but that can be changed if required. And you can add notes if you need. I'll click Save to that. You can also record a referral out in much the same way. So that completes the process. If I click Save, I can see that the patient is now registered and their name appears at the top left of the screen. Next, we'll look at some of the other key areas of the patient record. So to do that, I'm going to jump to the first patient that I opened. As I mentioned before, the first screen you see is the home screen. This button at the top here will always take you back to this home screen where you can view patients' details, their address, phone number, change their practice details, etc. Next button is Appointments, and this will show me both historical and future appointments. The appointments here in bold are pending or future appointments, whereas the other appointments are historical. If I select appointment, at the bottom you can see information about who booked it, when it was booked, and whether it was changed, if the patient DNA'd, if they attended, etc. These numbers and letters at the top are very useful. If I hover over it, it tells me what they mean. So at a glance here you can see how many total appointments they've had, how many times they've DNA'd, how many times they've cancelled, etc. Next thing we'll have a look at is the medical questionnaire. So if I select this icon at the top, that will take me to the medical. Any previously completed medical questionnaires will display in here. But to record a new one, if I select Assessment, then the questionnaire appears as a new window and you can work through answering yes, no to each question. I'll change one of the answers to yes. When I do that, I can then enter some text to indicate what that warning refers to. If I click OK, I can see that that's marked now as yes, and if I click OK again, you'll see that now in the quick view, any questions that the patient's answered yes to will display, and the full view will show me the full medical questionnaire and all answers. Also note that there's a red flashing light on the patient's record now. This is an indicator that the patient has some medical conditions or warnings to be aware of. Next, I'll demonstrate how memos and pop-ups work. If I select the icon here, that opens that screen up. You can add pop-ups to a record. These are literally, as the name suggests, pop-up alerts that open when you open a patient record. I'll select New to create a new pop-up. You can enter your pop-up note in here, and it can be used for any kind of alert or notification for the patient. I can see pop-up is selected. If I then click OK, that's now added to the patient record. So to demonstrate how that works, I'll click on the X at the top to close the patient record down. Go back to Patient. I'll select the patient from the recent list, and you can see now that the pop-up appears. And to close it down, if I just click on the red X. Note also that there's an alert here that relates to the medical questionnaire that I completed earlier. I'll go back to Memos and Pop-ups. I can see that the pop-up is still there, but I can edit that or delete that if required. As well as a pop-up note, you can also add a memo. So this can be used for maybe a slightly more sensitive note. For example, I'm going to indicate that this is a nervous patient. I can then click Save to that, and you'll see that this note then appears at the bottom of the screen. This won't flash up or pop up when you open the patient record. But as a notification that the patient has a memo, you can see that this icon appears in the patient flags area. Next, I'll show you how to send information to a wireless signature pad or patient portal. By selecting this icon, you can indicate what you want to send to the patient, including the patient's details. You can send a medical questionnaire. There are different assessments that you can select to send, an NHS form, and also the GDPR consent information. From here you could select to send to a specific pad or to patient portal, and then you click Submit to send that for the patient to complete.